Welcome back to State of the Union. A dispute between the House and Senate could delay badly needed U.S. aid to both Israel and Ukraine after House Republicans passed a bill this week that is a non-starter in the U.S. Senate. Here with me now to talk about the latest in Israel is Republican Senator Lindsey Graham and Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal. They have traveled extensively internationally together, including to Israel after the October 7th attacks. Thank you both for being here. Senator Graham, I'll start with you. The Biden administration is warning Israel that failing to limit civilian casualties and address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza risks eroding global support, including in the U.S. You've said there should be no limit to what Israel can do to take out Hamas. But is the administration right that Israel needs to do more to protect civilians in Gaza?
Well, I think Israel is committed to following the law of armed conflict. One thing I want to say for sure is Israel's not engaged in genocide. And then another thing we need to deal with is the whitewashing of the status of people in Gaza. I'm sure there are plenty of people who would love to be free from Hamas, but the most radicalized people on the planet live in the Gaza Strip. They've been taught since birth to kill and hate the Jews. How do you teach math in Gaza? If you had 10 Jews and you kill 6, how many would be left? That's been in their school system. So I'm all for providing humanitarian aid in a fashion that doesn't help Hamas. I'm all for Israel having the time and space to destroy Hamas. I'm all for a new governing regime over the Palestinian people when this is over. And I'm all for Israel and Saudi Arabia reconciling. That's sort of where I'm at.
But no pause? No humanitarian pause?
I don't want to take the pressure off Hamas militarily, but if Israel can find a way to help the humanitarian situation, yes, I'd like to do it. But after World War II, did anybody ask us these questions? You got to realize the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on cities in Japan to end the war. I think this is total war between Israel and Hamas. I want to protect innocent people as much as possible, but I want the world to realize that the radicalized population in Gaza has been going on for over a decade. This will not be easy. When you've been taught from birth to hate the Jews and kill them all and drive them into the sea, and here's what I think, 80% of the people in Gaza support the idea from the river to the sea. That has to change.
Senator Blumenthal, 14 of your Democratic colleagues said there should be a pause. What do you think?
I agree that there should be a pause to enable more humanitarian relief, food, fuel, water to reach the Palestinians, but also to enable release of the hostages. I've met almost every day by phone or in person, and we saw them when we were in Israel with the families of hostages. These situations are really heartbreaking, and I think that we should do a humanitarian pause to enable release of the hostages. Also, movement of civilians from the north part of Gaza, which is really the combat zone, to the southern part through a humanitarian corridor. There are measures through a humanitarian pause that can be taken to reduce civilian casualties. But let's keep in mind Israel's right to defend itself. We went on this trip, a bipartisan group, 10 of us, to express solidarity with Israel. And what we heard and saw was harrowing in the videos that were shown to us. And what a minister of the War Cabinet said, you know, these people tried to run and hide. For our whole history, we've tried to run and hide. Israel was supposed to be a safe place where we didn't need to run and hide anymore. So for Israel, this is a fight, a war about its very existence against a terrorist organization that has a single goal: destroy Israel, annihilate the Jewish people, and, you know, is continuing to advocate it. Just the other day, Gazid Hamad, a senior Hamas official, said that Israel can expect a second strike, a third strike, a fourth strike, just like October 7th, until it is annihilated. So Israel, I think, should do a humanitarian pause, but the ultimate goal has to be kept in mind.
And you're talking about Hamas. I know you're both very concerned, as are others, about it expanding beyond the Gaza border and expanding more regionally. You both are introducing a bipartisan sense of the Senate resolution tomorrow about Iran. Senator Graham, what will it say?
Well, it basically says if the war expands, if Hezbollah opens up a second front in the north against Israel in a substantial way to overwhelm Iron Dome, then we should hit the Islamic Republic of Iran. There is no Hamas without the Ayatollah's support. There is no Hezbollah without the Ayatollah's support. The great Satan in the regions, not Israel or the United States, is Iran. So Senator Blumenthal and I just got back. Israel is begging us to deter Iran. They don't want the war to widen. If any of our troops are killed in Syria and Iraq by Iranian-backed militias, I think that's an expansion of the war. So the resolution puts Iran on notice that all this military force in the region will be coming after you if you expand this war by activating Hezbollah or killing an American through your proxies in Syria and Iraq. And they need to hear that. They need to believe that.
Senator Blumenthal, I know it's just a sense of the Senate, which means it's not binding, but to have that voice from the U.S. Senate that warns Iran that the U.S. could militarily strike Iran if they expand this war, that's pretty aggressive.
It's aggressive, but it's absolutely necessary. And it's not only in Israel's explicit interest. They will support this deterrence. And the key word here is deterrence. The purpose of the resolution is to deter Iran by showing we're going to be behind the president as he seeks to stop the war from widening or escalating. And here's the other point, Dana, which I think is really critical. We visited Saudi Arabia and Egypt, and believe me, they loathe and fear Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas and the other proxies as much as Israel. So they are in favor of deterring a wider war. I think there's bipartisan common ground here, and there's consensus in the region that deterrence is critical because Iran here is the toxic, malign influence. It is financially fueling, equipping, supplying all of these proxies that have as their goal to disrupt and destabilize the region when powers like Saudi Arabia want economic prosperity. They want to normalize relations with Israel and achieve stability and peace. And there is a strong view, and I agree with it, that the reason why Hamas struck now and why Iran gave them the green light to strike now is because the talks on normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia were making progress.
There is going to be some form of a measure to approve more funding for Israel. The House passed something that was just focused on Israel. You both, I'm sure, would agree it's dead on arrival in the Senate, in part because it doesn't include support for Ukraine. Senator Graham, I'll start with you. The Senate, will it ultimately pass a bill that includes funding for both?
Yeah, I think so. I think you'll have a bill that will have border security. We'll be insane as a country not to fix our broken border. It's just we're living on borrowed time in terms of the border being broken and an attack on our own nation. I am for Ukraine support. We can't pull the plug on Ukraine, let Putin get away with this. There goes Taiwan if you do that. I'm definitely for Israel. So I think you'll see a package of border security, funding for Ukraine, funding for Israel coming out of the Senate, probably as one package. I would support that.
Before I let you both go, Senator Blumenthal, I have to ask about some new polling that is a big warning sign for your fellow Democrat in the White House. The New York Times and Siena College, it shows that Donald Trump is leading in Nevada, Georgia, Arizona, and Michigan, tight races in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. How worried are you about the president's reelection campaign?
I was concerned before these polls, and I'm concerned now. These presidential races over the last couple of terms have been very tight. No one is going to have a runaway election here. It's going to take a lot of hard work, concentration, resources. And so we have our work cut out for us. But I believe that the president's record, and we've just been talking about an area where his leadership has been critical, where he's forged a bipartisan consensus in favor of a peaceful outcome with a Palestinian state as the goal. A lot of bipartisan agreement between Senator Graham and myself on the need for a combined package. I think his leadership is going to be really critical, as it was in putting together this trip. But let me just make this point down. I think we are at a turning point in the Mideast, a critical point of potential no return if there is a widening of the war. And so we need to get together on deterring Iran and making sure it understands that it will face consequences if it unleashes its proxies, as it seems possibly to be intent on doing. I think President Biden's leadership is important.
You definitely do not have bipartisan agreement on who should be in the White House after 2024, but it is important to have this bipartisan discussion on such a critical issue and such a critical moment. And I appreciate you both coming on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.